Hello and welcome to 4th and 1 with Faith and Kayla. It's your co-host Kayla.
And your other co-host Faith. And man, what about that game? The first game day in Raiderland, we were on the edge of our seats, the second half of the game for sure. And in the end, we were still excited for that game. Kayla, tell us about it.
There was us and 50,000 plus other people in the Jones on Saturday.
Right, and it's exciting too, just refreshing everyone. Going back to 2020, we didn't have that 50,000 in the stadium. So this was honestly an awesome first game day in Lubbock, Texas.
Post-COVID,
right?
Full tailgate, full tilt. Everybody's there.
Yes.
It's a great time.
Yes, and who was it that we got to see in Lubbock, Texas again?
That's right, Shaquille O'Neal. I know we mentioned him last episode, but
it's Shaq.
And
he deserves another shout out.
As a DJ, I'd give us all 8 out of 10, but it's Shaq, so he can do whatever he wants.
Right.
He can do whatever he wants.
Okay, so let's jump right into that post-game ice bath. Texas Tech won 28-22 against SFA. I'm not going to lie, I think they gave us a little bit of a run for our money there.
It was definitely not as Tech-centered and Tech-led as we expected, but it was the coaches versus coaches battle we entirely predicted.
Right there at the beginning of the game, the third play of the game, Eric Azukoma ran 75 yards for a touchdown. Texas Tech fans and students were excited from the get-go, starting this game out, but then SFA really put on a show. Honestly, I think it was good for us. Second game of the season, we thought we were just going to roll right over SFA and keep going to FIU, but honestly, I'm kind of glad they gave us a little bit of a fight to prepare us for those bigger components later down the road.
Plus, it definitely helped us see some of the places where we weren't as ready as we thought we were, where we weren't as confident and prepared like we saw against Houston. So definitely there was a big comparison in between the University of Houston game and our most recent game against SFA. Faith, what do you think some of the differences are?
This game, I think we definitely did not throw the ball near as much. Something I noticed actually looking at the statistics after the game was that we had 5 receivers that made plays this game. Whereas something that I noticed about SFA this past game was Coach Carthel had 11 receivers playing the field and making plays. And not to compare us to SFA necessarily, but it really made me recognize how little of passing we had this game compared to the game against Houston for sure.
2 of those 5 receivers were also our running backs.
Right.
Which is...
So they're exhausted.
Exactly.
They're exhausted.
And for those listening, Faith and I are huge Tech fans. You will never hear us speak ill of Texas Tech. You will never hear us speak poorly. But we are also huge football fans. And we want to be realists and we want to be accurate and correct in our representation of Tech in the game. And we don't always want to be the positive, here's everything that went perfect, because that's not the truth of football.
Right. And you know what? To be honest with you, we expect the best out of Tech football every single time they get on that field. So, we're gonna pull out the good things and applaud for them, but we're also gonna be little fans of the sin, hey, pull it together, throw some more passes next game. Part
of the issue with only throwing and targeting 5 receivers is, number one, it shows us Tyler Shuck's discomfort with the offense.
Right.
I think personally, I would say that it just displays, maybe he doesn't know some of his receivers as well, or he isn't equally as comfortable, and he just lacks some of that, I know I can target this guy and he will catch it. Obviously, he targets Eric Ezekama often. I would say a generous amount of the time.
Honestly, as he should, right? But, we need to get more players out there and give him some breaks, too, so that he can continue to make those 75-yard long runs.
Coaches and players adjust when they see you targeting one receiver consistently.
Right.
They're going to say, oh, hey, we know where the ball is going.
Right.
So that plays a huge part in the success of the offense in a game. So leading from that point into the next, let's discuss some of the players he targeted. Let's discuss some of the players he should have targeted. And let's break down the huddle.
Right. So in that third quarter of the game, Taj Brooks comes out. I don't know what happened again during halftime, but every single halftime, Texas Tech turns it around, or at least comes out with a fiery attitude to get back after it in that third quarter. And Taj Brooks proved that to be true. And he made a run for 67 yards, putting us back in the lead against SFA. I think that put some fire under our butts there a little bit.
It definitely changed the pace of the game, the pace of the second half. But who I really want to highlight in that run, although an outstanding athlete, is not Taj Brooks.
Right.
Watching that game and watching that specific play, the offensive line had some of the most textbook pristine blocking I have seen from Texas Tech in a long time. Dawson Deaton was the lead blocker on that run, and he's also a potential Sunday player. You know, we talk about Eric Azakama, Rico Jeffers, all those guys. Dawson Deaton's name is in the list as well, following the footsteps of Terrence Steele, who now plays for the Cowboys, and Jack Anderson, who now plays for the Bills.
All right.
Dawson Deaton's lead block on a middle linebacker was the reason Taj was able to make that run. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those places in football that's not always as highly talked about, but it's a fundamental necessary step to achieve these goals and achieve these plays. And when the offensive line is working and in tune and everything's running correctly, the difference is incredible.
Right. It's definitely a team effort out there. It's not like LeBron running the show. It is a team effort of Taj Brooks and Dawson Deaton's of the world making those big plays happen, honestly. Another statistic that I would really like to discuss is the amount of turnovers Texas Tech had this game. We had 4 turnovers, 2 fumbles, 2 interceptions. And, you know, sadly, one of those had to be accounted to Tyler Shuck throwing an interception. But, again, there was a lot of things that went into that, not just Tyler throwing that, but, you know, getting the pressure from the defense and being rushed and whatnot. But sadly, it did end in a pick 6. That's something that no Tech fan wants to see for sure.
It's very unfortunate. Interceptions and fumbles and turnovers are something that completely changed the course of the game. And against teams like SFA, we can bounce back from 4 turnovers.
Right.
But against teams like Texas,
we will not be bouncing back for 4 turnovers.
And that's a huge issue I know we had last season, and something that's been a clear issue going into this season, especially in this game, where those momentum shifts happen on mistakes we make.
Right. I really think this game was a good wake-up call for our offense. Not that it was perfect necessarily before this game against Houston, but it is definitely like getting down to the fine-tuning of what do we need to fix? What do we need to fine-tune before our big games like Texas? You know, we're just a week and a half out from Texas right now, and we're really hoping that they fix these mistakes before we have to face those Big 12 opponents.
Following in line of the turnovers Tech had, SFA actually had 0, which is an unfortunate statistic to report on a Tech football-centered podcast.
Right.
But they did have consistent pressure in the backfield the entire game, which absolutely affected the way they play. And there was multiple sacks.
It was guys like Krishan Merriweather and Tyree Wilson that put quarterback Trey Shelf in a lot of panic, honestly. It was good, but, you know, Trey Shelf seemed to have that good confidence about him going out onto the field. He had lots of receivers to throw to, and every single time we had our guys on him and ready to tackle him, and we had several solo tackles, like you mentioned, and that was honestly very key for us on the defensive side of the ball. And
I think 2 players worth mentioning.
Right.
In so many ways. 2 players worth mentioning who are also kind of a package deal. Like they come like a pair of shoes. You can't really have one without the other. Yes, absolutely, Faith. You can't really have one without the other.
Literally.
Are Jalen Hutchings and Tony Bradford. And these are 2 defensive tackles on either side of the center. They are some top-notch players.
Right.
And they both had a sack this game. They have incredible chemistry inside of practice, outside of practice, on the field, off the field. They are inseparable best friends, and that really resonates in the way they play.
Right, and I think that chemistry and appreciated too off season. All that long amount of time they spent in off season and during COVID times where, you know, they spent a lot of time with the team because there wasn't a lot of fans around and there wasn't that many people in the stands, so they had to fuel off of one another's energy. And so I think that's really kind of like a built up friendship and bond that goes to show statistically how well it's working out for us.
And that's one thing Coach Randolph, our defensive line coach, really drills in, it seems, to these defensive linemen, is that you need to be best friends. You need to be a family. You're not going to make it, you know, you're not going to make those huge tackles, those huge sacks by playing for yourself as yourself.
Right. Once again,
it's a team effort.
Yes. Once again, Tech is playing that team effort ball right now, and it's fun to watch, honestly.
And those 4 people we just mentioned on defense, those 4 men, are definitely people to keep your eyes the rest of the season. They are playmakers. They are game changers. They are turnover forcers, although not seen in this game.
Right.
We will see it going forward. And they are the spark of the defense.
Right. I can't wait to see cause a fumble and, you know, scoop and score. I'm excited to see what these guys are going to do for the rest of the season if they're making those solo tackles this early in the season.
They're a huge part of the Tech defense, specifically the Tech defensive line, that is one of the strongest parts of our team. In my humble opinion, I would say they are one of the key and essential pieces of the Texas Tech defense.
Mentioning the defensive line, I'm excited to see them face our next opponent, Florida International University, a completely unknown team to us. You know, they play Texas.
Completely unknown team.
Completely unknown. It's like, you know, walking into a dark tunnel. We don't know what they're going to throw at us. We don't know what we're going to be chasing in this game necessarily. The last time we played them, it was 2005.
I was 5 years old.
Right. I was 4 years old, which that means the players were also 4 and 5 years old.
We're also,
our defensive line was 4 and 5 years old the last time Texas Tech played Florida International.
We know so little about this team. I mean, obviously, coaches and players know so much more by watching film and being able to break those things down. But as fans and as people who invest a ton of time and effort into studying Tech football, our sole point of reference is them losing to Texas State last week.
Right. In overtime. Right. So, and that was kind of crazy to me just because we don't play Texas State every year. Mm-mm. We definitely don't play Florida International. But it was cool to know that, like, a Texas team got taken into overtime by this Florida International University.
So there should be at least some competition. Like, it should be a game. Fingers crossed. In 2005, for reference, we did win 56-3. We're not trying to flex on Florida, but we're flexing on Florida.
You know, it would be nice to have a repeat of that game.
It would. It'd be so nice. But this is really just turning into the type of game where, because it's so unknown, because it's so unknown, we have the opportunity to try out new things. We have the opportunity to see our kinks. And it's not like we're playing a division opponent who we've played before. We know their skills, their weaknesses, their coaching style. It's a completely raw and untouched playing field.
Right. And it's going to be cool to see their head coach, Butch Davis. We don't really know much about him either. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, is he going to throw the ball a lot? Is he going to pass the ball a lot? Are they going to have a really strong run game? Are they going to run the triple option? We don't really know. It's going to be interesting for us, and I think it'll be really good for us to kind of take on somebody that we aren't totally expecting every single play. We don't know every single key player on their team quite yet, but it will be good for us. Those things that we noticed in this past game against SFA that we kind of struggled in, we will have to take this game as an opportunity to fix those and fine-tune them before we play the University of Texas next week.
Who we do know a little too well. To be honest with you, Faith, the thing I'm most excited for this game is hearing the name quarterback Max Bortenschlager consistently repeated throughout the Jones.
How many syllables did that one have?
But okay, that's all I got.
So for this next game, Kayla, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of Sonny Cumbie. What are you telling the guys this week at practice? What are you looking for? What plays are you going to call differently? What are you going to do differently? What are you going to be saying to Tyler Shuck this week? Tell me your game plan, Coach Cumbie.
Well, thank you. First off, I would tell them to not overlook this game. It's not a walk in the park. It's not a we won 56-3 15 years ago. This is a game like every other game.
Right.
This is as important as every single other game.
Mm-hmm. I think we had a little bit of that mindset.
We did.
Thus, the 28-22 should have been a 28-14 or less.
Exactly. And we just viewed, I don't want to speak on behalf of everybody, but we kind of sort of in some ways overlooked this game, and we cannot make that mistake going forward. I also think that I would make sure to tell Tyler Shuck to target more receivers, to have better downfield vision, to look ahead, to not be so focused on the guys he trusts. Although that is great and totally essential to the game plan, there are other pieces that need to be brought in.
Right.
And I would also, as Sonny Cumbie, would tell the guys to have the same kind of attitude they've carried in the third quarters, to maintain that from the get-go, to have that 75-yard huge run, but to keep that momentum, to keep those big plays at the beginning of the game, but don't let it fall off as we go through.
You know, I think something that is constantly reoccurring in Tech football year after year is this idea of consistency. We really have got to pick up better consistency. And if that looks like third quarters for all 4 quarters, then so be it. We would love to see a third quarter game, not just a third quarter. We would love to see that consistency throughout the games. And, you know, it's the beginning of the season. It's only 2 games in, and I'm excited to see where the rest of the season is going to go, but we're going to have to gain some consistency and some maturity as far as keeping that hype and that level of excitement in those plays down, ready to go from that third quarter in the beginning of the game.
Exactly.
As soon as the game starts.
And I think a lot of that weight falls on the captains of your team.
Right.
And that falls on those team leaders like Rico and Tyler and Eric. And Tony Bradford and Jalen Hutchings and all those guys we've previously mentioned that do bring the energy and bring the power and bring the oomph to the Texas Tech team.
Yes.
And when those guys are fired up, the rest of the team is fired up.
The rest of the team is fired up. And you know what? I'm going to throw Matt Wells in there because he's obviously, head coach, but he is very essential to pulling the team together that first quarter, the first down of the game, having that third play 75-yard run throughout the rest of the game. It seems to be that
when our offensive line, when our star receivers, when our quarterback, when our defensive and everything is working, Tech football is a sight to see. It is something to behold. The fundamental all 22. It takes an all 22 mentality to win these games.
Yes.
It's not an individual. It's not a, hey, this person needs to do this or this teammate needs to do this. It takes everyone.
Right. And that team aspect is really what is going to bring us together, not just to win these games, but to take us to those bowl games late in the season. It's going to
Fingers crossed.
It's going to be what takes us to a win against Texas in a couple weeks. We're going to have everyone come together to pull these games to a win, all of them.
That includes coaches, players, everyone is essential.
Right.
And that energy and that game day atmosphere and that fire is needed to be felt by every single person.
Very much so. Let's talk about those pigskin players that are going to be essential for next week. Who is first on your list for your pigskin player of the week?
So my pigskin player of the week, Faith, is our starting center, Dawson Deaton. We've talked about him being a Sunday player. We've talked about him being a leader of the offense. But Dawson Deaton holds that mentality that inspires and encourages the rest of the offense. He is unbreaking, unrelenting, and consistently brings the same energy, effort, and attitude to every single game. He does not falter. He does not fall short. He is, in my opinion, our steadiest player and therefore an essential cog to our offense. So my pigskin player is Dawson Deaton because he is going to make this game what it needs to be.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly. Dawson Deaton had a great game, and I'm excited to see him grow this season, really. I'm excited to see him game 10. It's going to be really see him show out and be prepared to see where he's led the team this far, honestly. My player of the week is definitely Taj Brooks. He really showed out in the third quarter. He had a great game pretty much all the way around. And the first game, our collective players were really Eric Ezukoma and Rico Jeffers. And they're definitely going to be people to continue looking for, but I think it's exciting to add Taj Brooks and Dawson Deaton to that group of guys.
And I think it's exciting the fact that the two players we picked are essential for each other. One cannot coexist without the other.
Exactly.
They carry that team mentality.
Yes, exactly.
They bring everything we want Tech football to be into reality.
Right. And what is one thing that we're going to be looking from Tyler Shuck this upcoming weekend based off of the last two games?
I think we need to see him gain some trust in other athletes other receivers he's with. We need to see him looking downfield, and I would love to see some confidence. We saw a ton of confidence in the first game, but at home in the Jones, you could tell he was still kind of trying to figure it out. What would be something you would want to see?
I want to see those offensive kinks worked out, and that comes with a relationship between Sonny Cumbie and Tyler Shuck, and then Tyler Shuck turning that around and leading the offense. That we have those great key players make every single play count.
Exactly.
And
I think those are definitely people to look for. We've talked about defense. We've talked about offense. All of Tech football is worth watching.
Right.
Every single player is worth observing.
Right.
But now you know a few more names.
Yes, and you know what? For this upcoming game, even though it is another home game, we have some more exciting news.
Speaking of a name you might know.
We actually have two guys to talk about.
Yes.
So before the game, we have Waka Flocka Flame.
We have someone else bringing the heat, bringing the fire that we need.
Right. We had Shaquille O'Neal last week, and we have Waka Flocka Flame this week performing right here in Lubbock, Texas.
Casually.
Yeah, casually, right before the game. So I think that will bring a lot of fans and excitement, and the students, of course, will be back and better than ever with tortillas in hand. And so I'm excited to see, will that 50,000 come back?
Exactly. And Waka Flocka Flame, although unknown by a large majority of our listeners, I would assume, he's just a rapper. He's just a party. He's just there for a good time.
Yes, he is there for a good time. He is a party. He is going to bring the life to the Jones this weekend.
He brings the pump, and he brings the students, which influence the players, and it all creates the atmosphere we're looking for.
Yes, that atmosphere that we missed out on last year. So I'm excited to see if it's Waka Flocka Flame, if it's our Tech offense or defense that brings him there. Just make sure that we get our fans in seats.
Exactly. And on a more serious note, there is a huge event happening
Yes.
at Texas Tech football this weekend.
Michael Crabtree.
He will be on site, on location, there, present, and being recognized for everything he's done for Texas Tech.
And really, it's just kind of a reminder that we're a week out from playing Texas. I think this week is going to be a good prep for UT next weekend in Austin, and I think that we're going to be able to see lots of those kinks being worked out and hopefully get to see our offense grow and get better.
And no matter what, Michael Crabtree, Walk a Flock of Flame, offense, defense, last week's game, a win is a win. We won. It wasn't the prettiest game we've played. We have some things to work on, but we're 2-0. And we finished the game in victory formation. And that's really all we can ask for.
Right. We finished the game on a knee there at the end when we're ahead, and it's a win. It's a win in my book.
So if we can just carry that consistency,
right,
carry all those things we know need to be worked on, and bring that steamroll into next game, I think we've got a winner. That was 4th and 1 with Faith and Kayla. Thanks for listening. See you next week.